Welcome back, everybody, to the Rec Room. And this has been a really busy last about week of getting the show rolling out, and excited to be here with Darien Harris, who many of you, I'm sure, will know just through being involved in Michigan State athletics, not only as a student, as a player, but also now as a leading contributor to the NIL community and kind of ushering in a new era of collegiate athletics. So, really excited to be here with Mr. Harris. I know for me, one of the most memorable moments that I have as a Michigan State fan was that Rose Bowl stop in with Mr. Ellsworth and then as well with you. So just wanted to say, for as long as you've been making an impact at Michigan State, I'm really excited that we're able to kind of tap into that. So thank you for
Definitely,
being.
man. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
No doubt, no doubt. So, given the ties that you've had in not only the player sense, but as moving into an employee and somebody who is making similar impacts within the game, I wanted to know is who are your kind of top, most impactful athletes that you've either worked with in this new role that you're in or that you saw as a player? And if you wouldn't mind expounding on why it is that they are in that category of making an impact.
Yeah, for sure. Being at Michigan State, I just feel blessed to have been around some tremendous athletes over time, both as a player and then now working with this new generation of student athletes. And for me, what I try to do is pour into them the same, just companionship and that Spartan love, honestly, that I got from the athletes that I either played with or even before my time. And so. I always like to look at it as, who were my most impactful teammates that I had. And I always take like my roommates who, I talk to those guys every single day, every second of the day. We talk too much, to be honest. I always put them in a different category. And I think about, okay, the guys that I played with that really impacted my career on and off the field, who were those folks? So I think about, guys like Max Bulla, who was our captain, middle linebacker. He's now the linebackers coach at Notre Dame. He was a guy that, when I first got here to Michigan State, I mean, he really taught me the Spartan Dog way. And he was a guy that, in terms of leadership style, I always wanted to emulate that, especially being in the same position group and room as him. And what took it a step further with Max is, he was gracious enough to watch my film in terms of like my practice tape and practice film. And he would text me at literally all hours of the night because he was a film junkie. His nickname used to be the computer. And I mean, it would be midnight, 1 a.m., and get a text and wake up and it's Max. And he's like going over what you did wrong in practice. And you'd be appreciative of it. But then he would ask you, why aren't you watching film right now? And I'm like, dude, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. He said, well, that's the price to being great. And so, just taking those types of anecdotes, I was, again, I feel blessed and fortunate to have gotten a year with Kirk Cousins. And so just to watch him, obviously quarterback in the sense of, throwing the football, but how he quarterbacked a campus. I mean, there were different things that he would hold on campus and speaking engagements and like just how he galvanized the whole community was just tremendous to watch and kind of be a part of that. And so the opportunity I had to play with a guy like Kirk Cousins and then somebody like Darqueze Dennard, who just went in the MSU Hall of Fame. And that's a guy that's a big brother of mine, talk to him all the time. And just, profound story coming from Twiggs County, Georgia. Only had one stoplight in his hometown to coming up here, winning the Thorpe and being a first round pick and playing in the NFL. You just get opportunities to pull, a lot from those guys. And then, I think of the guys that are older than me, even in other sports. Mateen Cleaves is somebody that, I talk to often. And again, just that I know of course, the impact he had on the basketball program on Coach Izzo and on again this whole community. I'll never take for granted having access to these types of athletes and just men who have led by example and want the best for you. And so those would be a few guys that I can think of.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for taking the time to run through those. Why is it? Because I agree, I'm not from Michigan. I'm not from the Midwest. I'm from the West Coast. But when I began to hear about Michigan State, the beginning kind of insight that I got was the Spartan dog mentality, was the culture and community. Why do you think it's so strong at Michigan State? Like, what are the factors that go into having players come back and continuing to stay involved?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it starts with Coach Izzo, honestly. I mean, I think that the way that the basketball program treats their alums, has grind week, when all the guys come back, I'm always around for that. And, again, just to be, I mean, I could name a bunch of guys, of course, but Draymond's another one. Draymond Green is somebody that I've gotten to know really well. And every time he comes in town, just I try to carve out a few minutes, just to pick up something from him. And it's usually not about ball. This year we talked about fatherhood, standing right outside a Graduate Hotel. We had just a conversation with about 10, 15 of us about fatherhood. And so it definitely starts with of course, the longevity of Tom Izzo, but just how he's run his program and how much the players love to come back. And I think that permeates across the department into every other sport. And so now it's just a culture, like you said, and it's each one teach one. And we want to make sure that of course we're supporting as former players, we're supporting the current regime, but also making sure that they understand that, once you're done, you always have a home here and you always come back and we want to see you often. And so come back, be back around. That's why we started events like Spartan Dawg Con and things like that. Like we want to make sure that we're emulating what they have in basketball, because you can do that, and we're able to do that with the rest of our sports.
Yes. Yeah. And I like what you said about a new regime because indeed we are in the midst of one. And I think, in a lot of ways, as you said, it's important to teach and make known, hey, this is how it's always been done. When it was at the pinnacle, this is what it looked like, right? And here's kind of a roadmap and blueprints to get back. But the landscape of collegiate athletics is different. And so it allows for different opportunities and new ways to engage. So, what have you seen in ways that it's changing because of that? Because of some of the lack of guardrails, because of the new additions and ways that athletes can now be engaging in the community.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I think it's two sides of that aisle there. On the one hand, you do see on a positive note, a lot more community involvement, I think, because there you can add an NIL component to it, and I think it makes athletes a little more open to being in the community. And again, here at Michigan State, we've always been community driven, so we've always done community service and active community engagement. But now you're seeing athletes take that to other places. You're seeing, we got a couple football players, Jalen Thompson, Nate Carter, they ran camps in their hometown. Okay. You technically couldn't do that before NIL, as crazy as that sounds, because you couldn't really get it sponsored. You couldn't, there was a lot of that, those guardrails didn't really allow for that to happen. You could volunteer at camps, but you couldn't have your own. And so that is a really positive aspect of NIL when it comes to the community and giving back. On the flip side, we want our student athletes to build community while they're here at Michigan State. And, gone are the days of you're going to be here for sure for 4 years. If you're, really, really good, like we've had those types of players that come in for three and are out. But for the most part, you're probably going to be here for the length of your eligibility. And while I think we still are going to have, I think that you'll have a higher percentage of athletes that are here for their duration of their eligibility versus not, but it's definitely going to shrink down a little bit. If you look at football, we had 60 new players maybe this year, 40, something like that, between 40 and 60 new players. And a lot of those guys are coming from the portal, so they're already at least on their second school, if not their third school in some cases. And to get to that point of really feeling like this is your community, this is your home, just like anything, it takes time. As you mentioned, I'm from out of the state too. I'm from the DMV,
Yeah.
and so of course I was, chose to come here, and there's a myriad different reasons why, but it wasn't like, oh, it didn't become home until, year 3, year 4, going into senior year and then you're done and you look back and it's like, well, I really, really enjoyed my time. You don't get it necessarily after a year. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's a major part of it. Obviously, some guys do. If you come and if you're a Kenneth Walker and you have immense success, you would hope that he feels like Michigan State is home to him.
Yes.
But not everybody's going to have that level of an impact and one time season like that. And so you still want the athletes to be able to build community, and I think that's what we have to combat against a little bit with this new landscape.
Mm. Yeah, 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 yeah. And a lot of what I feel like you just touched on was the narrative that the odds are that you will be around for the duration. In a lot of those cases, and I won't sit here and say I have tremendous insight into Michigan State athletics. Largely, I don't. But I have been able to talk with quite a few different athletes from different sports just by way of podcasts or being in classes or working for Big Ten, however that may be. One thing, Darian, that bothers me about what people say conventionally about NIL is that it's de-incentivizing hard work and it's giving athletes a platform so they can take their foot off the gas because you are going to be around here and you'll either have your spot or you don't. That's still true. I feel like there's still that competitive drive. There's still that push, to get better, to grow, to win things, to be recognizable. What have you seen? Is what people say, is that true? Or is that not true? Are you saying that a similar work ethic?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, you never want to question an athlete's work ethic until they give you a reason to.
That's right.
I think that money is always going to change somebody's outlook and perspective on different things. That's just an unfortunate truth about money, and you're bringing in now this added uh, you know, uh, variable for 18 to 22-year-old student athletes that this
Mm,
is brand new to them and still relatively new to everybody. And
sure.
so again, yeah, you don't want to question work ethic necessarily, but at the same time, you want to be mindful of ensuring that they understand that this is not the end goal. The end goal needs to be competing for championships, getting
Yes.
better as a team, getting better individually, and ultimately, if it is your dream to make it to the next level. And so I think that while again, like you don't want to question work ethic, bringing in this idea of getting money early, it does call into question, okay, well, what are you doing to earn it necessarily?
Mm,
And then when you look at like professional leagues, NFL, NBA, anybody like that, it's now an extra variable that they can use to essentially evaluate a college collegiate athlete on if they're ready for the next level, because they're starting to come in and saying, okay, well, how are they handling NIL? Did it change them? Did it change their work ethic? How are they handling the money? Are they, spending it wisely? Are they saving? Are they going out and blowing it? Because if you're blowing NIL money, well, you're not ready for league money. And so it's an extra,
mm,
of course, it's an added benefit, but it's an extra level of responsibility that it's up to us from an educational standpoint to ensure that the athletes understand that while this is great that student athletes can monetize their name, image, and likeness, they also have to understand what comes with that.
mm. Yeah, 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 yeah. And what I think too is additionally to that, the concept of recruiting, right? And development and trying to win some of these intercontinental and interregional wars for talent and for people, for bodies. As you look at Michigan State, because like we've covered, you've been around here for a great deal of time, seen changes underway and understand this place at a deep level. What are some of the things that you look at where as you see Michigan State, you see that's somewhere that people should want to be? Michigan State is, a great place for X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, I mean, NIL is definitely a major part of recruiting now. It's what, primarily the recruits are asking about the most. And, I'd say, hey, I believe that we have one of the top NIL programs in the country because of all the resources that come with it. And it spreads across the entire athletic department, from team to team. Nobody gets more than another from a resources standpoint. Of course, the dollar figures and who earns more is going to be different, but that's again learning reality and learning life. I would say again from our educational resources standpoint, it's the same across the board. And then I have an opportunity to work with a lot of our teams in the recruiting capacity, meeting with recruits across different sports. And I think when they hear, it's essentially relatively easy for me to talk with passion about a place that I love, of course. So they know that that's genuine. And I just talk about that support that student athletes get here, which I believe is second to none. And ultimately, there's not enough money in the world that's going to me, outweigh having a elite experience at a place that you are planning to spend, 4 or 5 years of your life at. And so when you start talking and saying, hey, the NIL opportunities will be there, but how are you going to take advantage of this entire experience as a student athlete at a Power Five institution? We're going to help you navigate that to build a future that you want for yourself. And then when you kind of explain it in that way, then they understand that, yeah, we can get a lot of these things everywhere, but can we get what's unique to Michigan State everywhere? And you'd want to say from a recruiting standpoint, because it is sales and it is marketing, that's what recruiting is, but you want to sell the truth. And we feel truthfully that, as a student athlete, there's not too many places, if any other places that you're going to get a better experience than as a Spartan.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, thank you so much for joining in. Really appreciate your willingness to do this. And I know that our connections date back to even last year. So I'm just very fortunate that you've been able to be an advocate for me and that we've been able to connect. So
Absolutely.
that's the Rec Room with Darien Harris on this fine afternoon. We hope that you guys got a great deal of things about Michigan State out of this show. I know I sure did. And we'll definitely be back with a lot more of short form content and interesting, unique perspectives and stories, just like this one from Mr. Harris today. So thank you again. And we'll talk to you, all of you all soon.